The hard-pressed UN peacekeepers have improved security in some regions of eastern Congo. But this has pushed the Hutu FDLR and other militias to the west and the north. And a familiar pattern of harassed civilians have added to the population of the internally displaced. Unless UNHCR personnel are escorted by the military, these parts of North Kivu are the new no-go zones. Yet the NGOs who reject military escorts think it's vital for their safety to distance themselves from the UN. In some places, Médecins Sans Frontières has painted its cars pink so that armed groups don't confuse them with the UN.
By not living where they live, by not having the same position on things, to place ourselves each day as explicitly, as obviously and verifiably as possible outside the belligerents, meaning taking our distances from the UN agencies and the peacekeepers, because we are spontaneously assimilated to them. The UN system of agencies and peacekeepers means one and the same thing.
This is Kirumba, a town of 86,000 people in North Kivu. It made international headlines in August 2010 when 3 Indian peacekeepers were hacked to death during an attack on the camp by armed men. The Red Cross is the only international organization to have a permanent base here. This is officially a UN security risk zone, but Ariane Bauer, who's been working here for the last 9 months, is not put off by the danger. Today, Bauer and 8 other Red Cross volunteers are traveling to Bulahusa, a village of over 5,000, to distribute seeds in time for the planting season.
When it has rained as much as last night, we could end up getting stuck in the mud and then having to spend quite some time trying to get out. We'll see. For the moment, it's still okay.
No authorities here and no other NGOs. The only army presence is a group of soldiers engaged in illegal timber logging. Filming them would be fatal for the entire convoy. So no military escort for the Red Cross, just unmissable emblems of the organization. Ariane Bauer is in constant radio contact with her colleagues. They're heading towards FDLR territory.
Je dois dire, on bouge très régulièrement ici. On connaît les gens, on assiste pas mal aussi.
We travel here quite regularly. We know the people. We assist them quite a lot. So our access to the population is good. They would tell us if something was going on. And we announce our arrivals, not only to the population, but also to the military and to all the armed groups that operate in the region. So that minimizes the risks. Personally, I've never felt threatened, no.
To make sure its teams are safe, ICRC is in permanent contact with all the armed groups and constantly assesses the situation on the ground. According to the Red Cross's global head of operations, it's this constantly nurtured, take-no-sides policy that enables them to carry on dispensing aid.
Nobody was born neutral in face of appalling violence. Because when these cases of mass rapes, but also individual repeated instances of abuse against women and children in such contexts, you can't, as a human being, just remain indifferent. But we are among the rare organizations that go and sit down with the groups that were presumed responsible for these, face them with that, and not simply make a generic comment in public terms and then move on to something else. That is where we feel neutrality comes into play.
Ça va? Ok. Désolé pour le retard, hein? La route mauvaise, mais ça va, on est là. Ok. Bon.
In Bulahusa, out of a population of 5,000, a third is internally displaced. Since 1993, this place has been a battlefield between the Congolese army, the militias, and the FDLR Hutus. Most people have fled the village several times. But since the FDLR has been pushed back into the forest by the army, the villagers have returned and are again ready to plough. 4 months ago, Katungu Mushuko and her family fled the FDLR and left their village 5 hours walk away. Her husband, a nurse, used to make $10 a month, but today he has no job. They've lost their home, their 3 fields, and depend on random work to survive. The people in Buluhusa have given them a small plot to build a hut on and a field. Katungu says at least she can now work in the field without fear of attack.
When we went to work in the fields, we, the women, were raped. Unfortunately, it has also been my case. But my husband took pity on me and didn't disown me. The armed groups used to kidnap the men, threatening to kill them when we couldn't satisfy their demands for money or goods of value. They used to take the kidnapped men far from the village to put pressure on us, or downright kill them. Luckily, some were released. My husband had to go through this torture 4 times.
Katungu says her family will move again if the armed groups get closer to Buluhusa. She doesn't let her guard down. The Hutu FDLR are only 5 hours away, hidden in the woods. Goma, the provincial capital of North Kivu, teems with 4x4s and aid agencies. It's an encouraging sign that here at least the space is expanding. But Leon Barianga Rutuya, the president of the Provincial Assembly, sees it differently.
Quand les facteurs insécurité diminuent et la population...
When insecurity diminishes and the numbers of the displaced diminishes and people start going back to their villages, which have been destroyed, where roads are non-existent, what should humanitarian aid be? Give the population ploughing equipment to open the roads. And if this is not done, we say there is no reason for humanitarians to be there, because we can take care of all that.
Rubens Makindo, president of an opposition party in North Kivu, says it's fine to criticize the humanitarian aid bodies, but where were the Congolese authorities when the people needed them?
There are thousands of internally displaced. And who ends up assisting them? The humanitarians. Once again, our own Congolese are absent. It makes me sick when I see people demonstrating against one organization or the other, this or that NGO. You don't give enough to eat. You don't do a thing. I think the first thing the Congolese should do is to ask their government to assist them. The humanitarians should only interfere as a support to the Congolese government's efforts.
In North Kivu, outside the provincial capital, the population still lives in fear. As long as armed men are not just scarecrows in a field, the humanitarians in eastern Congo are here to stay. For Roni Broman, the inventor of the humanitarian space concept, it's too soon to beat a retreat from the conflict zones, despite the tragic loss of life and targeting of aid workers.
Will the 3 years, the black years, continue? Is this a peak that will then follow its normal evolution, or will there be an acceleration of the trend? We don't have enough hindsight to be able to judge. That's why, even if I take this period, where indeed humanitarians have been more targeted than before, I raise objections to the global diagnostic, because I really think it's too soon to say.
We have, and painfully so, lost a number both of national staff and of expatriates over recent years, not necessarily vastly in just simply numbers terms, different from the latter part of the 20th century, but still painful on every circumstance and unacceptable in human terms.
It's not easy, sometimes it's not even possible, but exactly because it is difficult, it is so important to stress the need to preserve at all costs the autonomy of the humanitarian space and to preserve the humanitarian principles in what we do.